Thank you. Carl Mayer, who wrote a book some time ago called Shakedown. A man we know. He knows the interior workings of this shakedown, of this corruption that the commercial media calls business as usual. We've talked about the corruption at the top, the commodification, the buying, the shopping, the gambling at the top. We've also talked about how it comes into our bodies, into our families. Can't raise our children anymore without bombardments of advertising. The corporations have gotten into the schools now, into the libraries, taken over public space. This corruption is not just dollars and cents. This corruption is also a matter of the human spirit. And our next speaker is Reverend Jarrett Maupin from Arizona. Reverend Maupin, please, let's give him a round of applause.
How are we today, my fellow patriots? How are we today? I want you to look around yourselves for a moment. Look up in the air and on the buildings. We stand under the view of one of our most illustrious founding fathers, our first president, George Washington. And across the way, above the signage of the New York Stock Exchange, we are under a sculptured mural, a facade of American workers and people toiling to make a living, working hard to live day by day. What does that mean? To be surrounded by these images, to be surrounded by these promises and these reminders of what freedom is supposed to mean in this country, of the promise of prosperity, the promise, the guarantee of returns on hard work for American people. What does that mean to us today? What does it mean to us that we are standing on Wall Street, a street built by African slaves in this country, to separate Native Americans, the indigenous peoples, from the white immigrants to these shores? What does it mean that we're surrounded by all of these reminders? It should serve a purpose. It should remind us of what our rights are as Americans. That we reserve the right not to be swindled, not to be cheated, and not to be manipulated by agents and administrators in our government and by the great banking entities in this nation. And that we deserve not to have to bail them out for their mistakes and for their mismanagement of their American economy and because they were greedy enough to rip off the American people. That's what it ought to remind us of today. We're standing here in a time when our nation is at an important crossroads, a breaking point, a shatter point for America, a time where people are losing their homes but working a job every day because they can't afford their mortgage payment because Wall Street and our president have decided that they want to bail out their friends, that they want to give their friends a golden lifeboat, a golden parachute, that they want to shore up. They want to shore up the corruption in the American economy. We cannot stand for that today. We cannot stand for that any day. What they ought to understand is that we are a free people and we are a free society and we are free indeed, and our freedom does not come in moderation. Our freedom does not come in a check in the mail every month. Our freedom is something that we have with us every day. And you can't put a price on it. But you can chip away at our freedom. And you can chip away at our independence. And you can chip away at our American lifestyle and culture by continuing to reward people whose sole purpose is to defraud Americans and to steal the money that they use to put bread on their table. And that's what this president has done. He's a crook and he ought to go. But I don't have any faith in Mr. Obama and in Mr. McCain. Because how can you accept the financial plan, the bailout plan for a man who's responsible for the misguided war in Iraq? How can you listen to a word that he says? How can you trust a man like Bush to bail America out of this financial crisis when he's the same man that authorized the federal government to spy on you in your home? How can you trust a man that has a knife in your back to save you? You cannot trust the president to do that. And these two nominees have put their full faith in the advisors and the policymakers under President George W. Bush. They have put the very future of the American economy back in the hands of a failed president. So how can a change agent and a maverick be beaten by a lame duck? Someone explain that to me. So we have to remember to hold them accountable. For those of you that are here that aren't a part of the middle class, that are a part of the working class that you never hear our nominees talk about. Those of you who work every day and can't afford health care. Those of you who work every day and can't afford your education. This bailout should have been for you. How come we can't bail out students and their student loans, but we can bail out the banks on Wall Street? How come we can't help the elderly and working class families stay in their homes? How come we can't bail out the American people? They didn't see the handwriting on the wall like Wall Street did when they were giving out adjustable rate mortgages and giving people loans, taking advantage of a depressed American economy, and then turning around and letting the American people suffer when their crooked plans and corruption came to the surface. It's un-American, it's unpatriotic, and in the days of George Washington, they'd be tarred and feathered and paraded down the streets of this city.